The Ouija Experiment. In a small, secluded town nestled amidst misty hills, the legend of the Wainwright house had long persisted. It was a tale whispered through generations, filled with dread and mystery. The crumbling Victorian mansion atop a lonely hill bore a curse, they said. The elders warned us to stay away, but our youthful curiosity was relentless, and we craved the touch of the supernatural. On a chilly autumn night, my friends and I gathered outside the decaying mansion. The full moon bathed the structure in an eerie light, revealing shattered windows and sagging eaves. Emily, our resident expert in all things occult, held a worn Ouija board with faded letters and symbols etched into its wooden surface. "Tonight," Emily declared with solemnity, "we shall make contact with the other side. We shall seek answers from the spirits that reside within the Wainwright house." As we ventured inside the dilapidated mansion, our flashlights pierced the oppressive darkness. We entered a grand foyer, where a tattered chandelier hung precariously from the ceiling. Portraits of the Wainwright family, their faces stern and pale, lined the walls. With trembling hands, we set up the Ouija board in the center of the room and formed a circle around it. Emily, with her knowledge of the supernatural, led the ritual. Placing our fingertips on the planchette, we began. "Is there anyone here with us?" Emily asked, her voice quivering. The planchette remained still. We exchanged nervous glances, but Emily persevered. "Is there anyone here who wishes to communicate with us?" Suddenly, an unnatural gust of wind swept through the room, extinguishing our flashlights. In the darkness, we could hear faint, mournful whispers, like distant cries from beyond the grave. Fear enveloped us, but we held our ground. The planchette began to move, its motion deliberate and slow. It spelled out a name that sent chills down our spines. Samuel Wainwright, the patriarch of the cursed family. "Samuel, are you here with us?" Emily whispered. The planchette glided again, spelling out yes. "What happened to your family?" Emily asked, her voice trembling. The planchette hesitated before spelling out a single haunting word: murder. A cold dread washed over us. The legend was true. The Wainwright family had met a gruesome end, and their spirits were trapped within these decaying walls. But the most terrifying revelation was yet to come. "Who murdered your family, Samuel?" Emily asked, her voice shaking. The planchette moved again, spelling out a name that sent us into a frenzy of terror. Emily. It was impossible. Emily couldn't have murdered the Wainwright family. We all knew it, but the Ouija board had spoken. The room grew colder, the whispers louder, and the shadows danced malevolently. We fled in terror, leaving the Ouija board behind. But the chilling encounter continued to haunt us, and we couldn't shake the feeling that something malevolent had been unleashed. Strange occurrences plagued us in the following weeks. Emily, in particular, suffered the brunt of the supernatural forces. She claimed to hear voices in her sleep, whispering sinister threats and haunting promises. Dark bruises appeared on her skin, inexplicable and painful. We were helpless witnesses to her torment. Desperation drove us back to the Wainwright house. Armed with candles, holy water, and crosses, we returned to confront the malevolent entity that had cursed our lives. We entered the house, fear gripping our hearts, but determination in our eyes. The room was tense as we gathered around the Ouija board. Emily took a deep breath, determination etched across her face. With trembling fingers, we placed our hands on the planchette. "Samuel, we need your help," Emily pleaded. "We must know the truth. Who really murdered your family?" The planchette moved slowly, spelling out a name we hadn't expected. "Emily." "No!" Emily cried, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't do it! I swear!" The room shook, shadows coiled around us, and Emily's cries grew louder. Then the room plunged into darkness. When the lights returned, Emily was gone. All that remained was a chilling message scrawled on the Ouija board. "I have claimed what is mine." We searched frantically, but Emily was nowhere to be found. The malevolent presence had taken her, and we were left with guilt and sorrow. The Wainwright house stood as a grim reminder of that night. The legend of the Ouija experiment lived on, passed down through whispered tales. The mansion remained forsaken, haunted, and a malevolent entity still lurked within, waiting for its next victim. To this day, I am haunted by the memory. The night we meddled with forces beyond our understanding. The night we learned that some secrets are best left buried. And the night we lost Emily to a malevolent entity that still lurks within the Wainwright house, waiting for its next victim. The Cursed Covenant. My friends and I had always been drawn to the macabre, to the dark mysteries that lurked just beyond the veil of the unknown. It was this insatiable curiosity that led us to the decaying remains of the old mill house deep in the woods. Legends whispered that the mill house was cursed, and that its rotting timbers held secrets of an ancient ritual, a ritual that could make contact with the spirits of the damned. We gathered in a dimly lit room, its walls adorned with cobwebs and faded wallpaper. The air was thick with the smell of damp wood, and the only light came from the flickering candles we had arranged in a circle. In the center, an ancient tome lay open, its pages filled with archaic symbols and incantations. Sarah, our unofficial leader, held a sense of purpose in her eyes that I couldn't quite fathom. She was the one who had discovered the ritual, buried in a forgotten corner of the internet. As she began to chant the incantation, her voice trembling with anticipation, I couldn't help but feel a growing unease. By the blood of the past and the secrets held within, we call upon the spirits. Let the ritual begin. Grant us knowledge. Reveal your hidden lore. From the realm of shadows, we implore. The room seemed to come alive with an eerie energy as Sarah continued to chant. The candle's flames danced wildly, casting elongated shadows that flickered across the walls. I exchanged nervous glances with my friends, but none of us dared to speak. We had come this far. We couldn't turn back now. As Sarah chanted, the air grew colder, and I felt a palpable presence in the room, as if something unseen was watching us. The pages of the ancient tome rustled, though there was no wind, and I could see faint outlines of figures moving within the shadows. My heart pounded in my chest, and I struggled to maintain my composure. Sarah's voice rose, her words becoming more urgent. It was as if the spirits were answering her call, their presence growing stronger with every passing moment. The room seemed to vibrate with an otherworldly energy, and I felt a sense of dread like I had never known before. Suddenly the candles went out, plunging us into utter darkness. Panic swept through the room as we fumbled for our phones, desperate for any source of light. In the dim glow of our screens, I could see the outlines of my friends, their faces contorted in terror. And then, a voice. A chorus of voices filled the room, whispering in a language I couldn't understand. It was a cacophony of anguish and despair, and I could feel it resonating deep within my soul. I clutched my ears, trying to block out the haunting sounds, but they seemed to come from within, from the very core of my being. The room was no longer the dilapidated mill house. It had transformed into a nightmarish realm of shadow and torment. Shapes moved in the darkness, grotesque and twisted, and I could hear their footsteps drawing closer. My heart pounded as I realized that we were not alone, that something malevolent had been unleashed. We ran, stumbling through the darkness, our footsteps echoing in the void. The whispers followed us, their voices growing louder, more insistent. It was as if they were trying to communicate, to impart some terrible knowledge that we were not meant to know. I could feel a presence behind me, something cold and unrelenting. I dared not look back, but I knew it was there, its breath icy against my neck. The air grew thicker, as if it were closing in around us, suffocating us in its oppressive embrace. As we reached the edge of the woods, the mill house seemed to crumble behind us, its rotting timbers collapsing into dust. I turned, one last look at the place that had become our living nightmare, and then we fled into the night. We never spoke of that night again, and we went our separate ways, haunted by the horrors we had witnessed. I tried to rationalize it, to convince myself that it had all been a hallucination, a trick of the mind. But the whispers still echoed in my dreams, a constant reminder of the darkness we had unleashed. Years passed, and I had almost managed to forget that fateful night. But then, one evening, I received an old, weathered envelope in the mail. Inside was a single piece of paper, bearing a message written in a language I couldn't decipher. It was a message from the other side, a message that filled me with a deep, unshakable dread. The spirits had not forgotten, and they were still watching, still waiting. The curse of the ritual had not been broken, and I knew that the darkness we had unleashed would haunt us for the rest of our days. The Midnight Pact. The night was dark and moonless as we gathered in the woods, a circle of 6 friends seeking thrills and chills. The stories we'd heard about the Midnight Pact had lured us here. They said it was a ritual to make contact with the other side, a doorway to the realm of the dead. I wasn't sure I believed in all that supernatural stuff, but curiosity had its hold on me. and the fear of the unknown had me in its grasp. My friends and I had researched the ritual extensively, or at least as much as we could on the internet. The instructions were vague, but we knew we needed a few essentials: candles, salt, a mirror, and an unwavering belief that this was all just a game. That last part was the hardest for me. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were tampering with forces beyond our comprehension. As we stood in a circle, each of us holding a lit candle, the night seemed to press in around us, oppressive and heavy. The woods were silent, as if even the creatures that dwelled here knew better than to be out tonight. Rachel, the bravest among us, began to chant the incantation we'd found online. By the moonless night, we gather here, to breach the veil, to cast out fear. Beyond the mirror, the shadows wane. Come forth, spirits, reveal your name. The words echoed through the darkness, and I felt a shiver crawl up my spine. But we pressed on, chanting louder, our voices trembling with a mixture of excitement and fear. The mirror before us began to fog, and I watched as shapes moved within the mist, like specters emerging from the void. "Is this real?" I whispered to Mark, my closest friend in the group. He shrugged, his eyes wide with wonder. The mist thickened, and I could see faint outlines of figures, their forms shifting and writhing. I couldn't make out any details, but I could feel their presence, a cold, malevolent energy that sent goosebumps racing across my skin. Rachel continued to chant, her voice growing more frantic, her words less distinct. It was as if the shadows in the mirror were answering her, their movements becoming more frenzied, more chaotic. "Stop!" I cried out, panic clawing at my chest, but no one seemed to hear me. They were all lost in the ritual, their eyes fixed on the mirror, their voices raised in a chorus of desperation. And then, in an instant, it all went horribly wrong. The mirror shattered with a deafening crash, sending shards of glass flying in all directions. We screamed, our candles flickering and going out as if snuffed by an unseen force. In the darkness, I could hear the sounds of something moving, something not of this world. We scrambled to our feet, trying to escape the woods that had suddenly become a nightmare. But the trees seemed to close in around us, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers. The shadows danced and twisted, taking on grotesque forms that mocked our terror. One by one, my friends were taken. Rachel was the first to go, pulled into the darkness by invisible hands. I heard her screams, her cries for help, but they were swallowed by the abyss. Mark, too, was yanked away, his voice joining Rachel's in a chorus of agony. I ran, stumbling through the woods, tears streaming down my face. I didn't know where I was going, but I couldn't stay in that accursed place. The woods seemed to stretch on forever, and the night was unending. As I ran, I could hear whispers all around me, voices that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere. They spoke in a language I couldn't understand, a guttural, otherworldly tongue that filled me with dread. And then I saw it, a clearing in the woods, bathed in an eerie, pale light. In the center of the clearing stood a gnarled tree, its branches twisted and contorted. Hanging from the branches were the lifeless bodies of my friends, their eyes empty, their faces frozen in terror. I stumbled to a halt, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I knew then that there was no escaping this nightmare. I had crossed a threshold, tampered with forces I couldn't comprehend, and now I was paying the price. The shadows closed in around me, their icy fingers wrapping around my throat. I choked and gasped for air, my vision growing dim. And in that final harrowing moment, I knew that I too would become a part of the Midnight Pact, a prisoner of the other side, lost in the darkness forever. As the last of my consciousness faded, I could hear the whispers of the spirits, their laughter echoing in my ears, a cruel and mocking sound that would haunt me for all eternity. And so, dear reader, heed my warning. Some doors should never be opened, some rituals should never be performed, and some horrors should never be sought out. For once you step into the darkness, there may be no way back, and the price you pay may be your very soul.